let's look at the issue of fixed costs, right? Now, fixed costs, we saw, contribute to rivalry among companies in the industry. It contributes to rivalry because when the costs are high, the companies need to earn a revenue which is at least sufficient for them to pay the interest on the loans that they have taken to set up that, to meet those high costs, right? Now, take an industry like the telecom industry. Now, the telecom industry, there are fierce price wars in the telecom industry. Rivalry is very high in the telecom industry. And why is rivalry high? Rivalry is high precisely for this reason. To set up one telecom company, you need to set up a probably 4,000 or 5,000 towers, which are towers around across the country in the areas which you were serving, and those are towers from which the radiations will be broadcast to the various handsets. Now, this is an enormous initial investment that you need to make. Once you have made this investment and once you have entered the telecom industry, you cannot use this infrastructure for anything else. Therefore, you really cannot leave the industry once you have entered it, right? Okay. What is the result of this? The result of this is that there are fierce price wars in that industry. For instance, you will recall that there was a time before the telecom industry was liberalized, when the telephone rates in India were amongst the highest in the world. Today, the telecom rates in India are the lowest in the world. The telecom, the wireless, the mobile telecom rates in India today are the lowest in the world. This is a result of price wars. And these price wars are happening because of the fixed costs that the companies have incurred in setting up these plants. Now, we said that there is one more factor, the exit barrier, right, which leads to rivalry among companies. Now, what is this? What is exit barrier? What does that mean, really? Exit barrier means that if you have entered a particular industry, then it's difficult for you to leave that industry. In such a case, such an industry is one where you have people who are there in that industry not because they want to, but they are there in that industry because they cannot leave that industry even if they want to leave that industry. Therefore, they continue in that industry, compete. They compete through price wars, right? This reduces profitability of all the firms in that industry. This is rivalry among companies, right? This happens because of the exit barrier. Let's look at some examples. Take telecom companies, right? Now, we saw that telecom companies need to invest, mobile telecom companies need to invest large amount of money in setting up the tower infrastructure across the country. Now, this tower infrastructure really cannot be used for anything else except telecoms, because of which the telecom company faces a huge exit barrier, and therefore telecom companies fight fiercely amongst themselves. Now, let's look at banks, right? Now, banks is a different kind of situation which produces the same effect. A bank has a large number of employees, right? It probably has, a typical bank would have close to a lakh of employees across the country. Okay. Now, Indian laws for termination of employment require large payments to be made to employees if service is discontinued. If the bank was to close down, the bank would need to spend huge amounts of money on severance wages. Huge amounts of money would need to be paid to employees who have been whose employment has been terminated. Therefore, banks again really have no option but to continue in the industry in which they are. And how would they continue? If we had a completely free banking environment, banks would compete against one another in offering lower and lower interest rates to people who took loans from them, and higher interest rates to people who deposited money in them. Now, we do not have a completely free banking environment as yet, and therefore the price war in the banking industry is relatively muted in India. However, in countries like the United States or the United Kingdom, where there are more transparent laws regarding banking, banks fight fiercely amongst themselves in interest rates. That's the one reason why interest rates in these countries are much lower than the interest rates in India, right? So, rivalry among companies is something which makes it unattractive for a firm to enter an industry, right?